The draft resolution on Syria under discussion at the UN Security Council is reportedly being softened to take into account Russian concerns. It's likely to have references to President Assad stepping down and an arms embargo removed from the text. Let's get more now from this development from RT's Marina Portnaya. She is in New York. Marina, why such a change in the UN, if indeed this report is true?
Well, Bill, if indeed these reports coming out are true, it clearly indicates that Western countries are yielding to the demands of Russia, China, many other members of the Security Council that have said the Council should not be used as a tool to impose regime change in Syria or any other country throughout the world, that the Security Council should work in facilitating a dialogue and coming up to peaceful solutions. And as you mentioned, there are several reports coming out that this new draft resolution on Syria does drop the call for Syrian President Bashar al-Assad to step aside and hand over his powers to his deputy. That is something that the Arab League, with the support of the U.S. and Western countries, wanted. In addition, this new draft, according to reports, also removes the reference of stopping the flow of arms to Syria. This was also a big concern for Russia and other countries because there are opposition groups in Syria that are also armed, and if there was an arms embargo put on Syria, nobody knew how it would be implemented. Western countries are still at the United Nations, along with Russia, China, all members of the Security Council right now, hammering out the details of this new draft. Now, it's still not clear whether Russia would support this new draft. Officials tell RT that nothing has been confirmed for sure on this draft. Negotiations at the UN are continuing, as I mentioned. But as the debate on the draft resolution on Syria continues, Moscow is reminding all Security Council members to take into account the recent report prepared by the Arab League observers, because this report does acknowledge the existence of arms groups in Syria involved in the killings of civilians and government forces. This is an issue that many members of the Security Council were reluctantly raised, or did not raise, when there was an open debate held a few days ago. And this is a circumstance in the report that needs to be underscored and taken into consideration, according to Russia, along with many other members of the Council. So clearly this is a new development. We are going to be following it because there are discussions and ongoing negotiations at the United Nations about this draft resolution on Syria. That's not ending anytime soon. So as new information becomes available, we will, of course, update our viewers.
And just briefly, of course, they are concerned that that Arab League report, as you say, should be brought into account. Is there a chance that it will be listened to now? And in fact, what impact, consequences would that have?
Well, the Arab League report from the very get-go should have been listened to, and it was cited. It was addressed by the two representatives of the Arab League, but they brought up certain facts of the report while addressing the Security Council on Tuesday, but didn't bring up other facts. One that I just mentioned, the fact that opposition groups are armed in Syria, and according to the report, they have been involved in the killings of civilians and government officials. What this indicates is that two parties in Syria are responsible for the violence. It's not just one-sided. And this is what Russia has been saying all along. The United Nations should not be taking sides in a conflict that's happening in a sovereign country. The United Nations should be trying to facilitate a peaceful dialogue, a peaceful approach to ending the problem, and not just take a side. So if this report needs to be underscored, highlighted, read thoroughly, and what this would indicate, what I think this means is that the Western countries can't rush to demand the president of Syria just step down if you see that other members of Syria, other citizens, are also responsible for the violence. This is a very complicated issue, and that's why it just can't be decided upon in 1 day, 2 days. I mean, we see it's been going on for 11 months. But there needs to be, according to Russia, a very fair and the correct approach in Syria. They don't want to have Syria be a repeat of what happened in Libya. Look at Libya now.
Marina, thanks very much indeed for that update live there from New York. Well, for more on the developments concerning Syria, we can now talk to Michel Chossudovsky. He's director at the Centre for Research on Globalization, joining us from Montreal. Well, as we're hearing now, there are media reports that suggest that diplomats in the UN have dropped calls for the Syrian president to step down. Many thought that Russia's stance would indeed isolate Moscow, but do you think now that Russia's concerns are actually being listened to now?
Well, I think the leaking of the observers' mission report of the Arab League should change the position which Russia takes in this debate pertaining to the draft resolution. It's notorious, to say the least, that the Arab League is not living up to the results of this mission report. And the mission report is very clear. It says there is an armed entity, and this armed entity is committing crimes against civilians, bombings, terrorist acts, and consequently the issue is who is behind this armed entity. They talk about the Syrian Free Army, they talk about armed opposition groups, and they provide evidence to the fact that this is an insurrection. It is not a peaceful protest. They acknowledge that there is a peaceful protest, but they say that in those circumstances, the mission was witness to that, and they said that there was no crackdown by government forces of peaceful protests.
But Michel, this is a very, very significant report, as you say. What are the consequences of it now being listened to within the UN? You said that it'll alter Russia's stance and, of course, the UN as a whole, the UN Security Council stance, won't it? In what way now? Just explain briefly.
Well, this report was leaked. We published it yesterday. All the missions of both the permanent and non-permanent members have this report. They can read it. The Russian delegation at the UN, permanent representative, can read it. What they should do is throw out that draft resolution and have another one which actually focuses on the foreign forces, including Turkey, Israel, Saudi Arabia, which are supporting an insurgency in a sovereign country, namely Syria. The report is extremely explicit. It also points to the fact that there's been a lot of media distortion, and it is not particularly pro-government. It cracks down on the government, but it also acknowledges what is known and documented by the independent media, but denied by the governments as well as the mainstream media, that there are armed gangs, insurgencies integrated by Salafists, Al-Qaeda affiliated organizations, which are killing people in Syria, and the question is who is behind them.
Okay,
it's not the Syrian government.
All right, let me quickly ask you about the significance of this development there in the UN. The idea that they're going to lose the call for Assad to step down and also take out any reference to stopping an arms flow going into Syria. What then should a new resolution consist of?
Well, first of all, I think the resolution should be scrapped, and that this report should be made public. It should be taken very seriously. Countries like India, Portugal, Pakistan, which are members of the Security Council, non-permanent members, should investigate the matter, and the Arab League, in fact, should live by the report which it has itself commissioned. It just so happens that this observer mission is made up of people who are not necessarily politically inclined. They're independent observers, and they're saying the truth. And they're saying the truth, and ultimately the truth should prevail, and this resolution should be thrown out, and Russia should take a stance, it should say we are not going along with this process. Okay? Enough is enough.
Michel Chossudovsky, thank you very much indeed for your thoughts. Director at the Centre for Research on Globalization, live there in Montreal concerning the latest developments in the UN over Syria. Other news now.